Good morning, guys. Great treat for you today. I'm here with a lifelong friend and a native of the island, Billy Burbank. And Billy, thank you for doing this with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to.
Billy's family goes, oh gosh, way back.
Early 1900s.
Started in the 1900s making nets for the shrimping industry and seine nets and gill nets. If it had anything, sports nets, if it had anything to do with netting, the Burbanks were known all over the world for doing it. Billy, I want to talk just a second about growing up here in Fernandina. And if you had to just pick out one item that really sticks in your mind about being a kid and growing up in Fernandina, what would it be?
I guess you would just have to say I was born and raised right on the beach. And I don't know when it was when I got a pair of shoes, because it was a pair of shorts and sand in my feet, and our life was the beach. Following granddaddy and grandmama, nanny we call her,
Yeah.
Pop and nanny.
Yep.
Saining days, I mean, that's what the grandkids did. We followed them around on the beach during the months that we had to make a living seining, because the shrimping industry wouldn't sustain you the whole year through. So
Right.
we had to catch fish to make a living.
To supplement it.
Yeah, so I guess I would have to say, growing up as a young boy, real young, I can remember seeing a picture of me in a little pair of red shorts eating a piece of watermelon right on the beach, right there, right across from where Main Beach would be, just down from it.
Yeah.
I was actually living and born right there at the cottages, which was the old coach. What was his name? Right there by Elizabeth Point at this point right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's where I was born, but that's what I remember most about growing up.
Yeah, it was, when you talk about seining on the beach, I remember my grandmother lived on North Fletcher, and oh my gosh, we would go seining at nighttime, and it was awesome to set that net and bring in the catch, the mullet, and we would ride up and down the beach with a light shining it to catch the mullet jumping.
Oh yeah. Hey, Susie, Chewy, could you hand me one needle, please?
That's where the fish would be, Billy, when we think about, and folks, we've talked mostly about growing up in Fernandina on all of these episodes, but today I want to branch out into an industry. And that industry, of course, is the shrimping industry. And I think it's probably, and as far as the 20th century goes, it was the backbone of this island and the economics of this island. And the Burbank family played a tremendous part in that. And there's so many facets to the shrimping industry. I mean, there was standard hardware, there was net making, there was boat building, there was diesel engines, there was the Drawdy brothers. It just went on and on and on and on. But Billy, y'all, the Burbank family, you've been making trawl nets now since what, 1900?
1915.
1915.
When my grandfather started making his own net, so to speak, and had a shrimp boat and made his own nets. And of course, he made them so well and he'd done so good that he was hired to make nets for guys who had fleets. And this is right out of Savannah area and all. And then graduated into, Standard Marine later in the years,
Right.
And he got hired on by them, and that's where I came in the late 60s. Of course, actually, I started when I was 9 years old making nets. I saw my mother do it, and I said, you know what? I can't let her do that, and I can't do it. So at 9 years old, I got in there, and, it was one of those things. And even today, I asked the question. I just didn't see it coming and don't know where it came from, but I have had no other job other than being a net maker.
I know. I can't remember of anything else that you've ever done.
No, I mean, I've had chores and stuff like that, but I mean, as far as anything to make a living, it's been a net maker. And, I just asked the Lord one day, I says, how in the world did I get here? I mean, I'm just at a point of, here I am.
Yep.
And I'm still doing it.
Yep.
And I watched my grandfather do it till he was 82 years old.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my father died at 69, but he worked right on up until his dying day. And
But you know, Billy, back then, that's what the men did. I mean, you know, my dad died at 59 and worked right up to, I mean, we worked at the boatyard the day before the morning that he had his final heart attack. And,
yeah,
you know, and like your dad, I remember going down to the net house, and I enjoyed going down there and listening to all the guys talk and tell stories. And then Red Freeman, you remember?
yeah, Red, yeah, Captain Red. He was a net maker himself.
He was good. His net making place was right next to my dad's boatyard.
Yeah,
I used to love going in there listening to all that stuff going on, you know. And it's a shame we don't have much more of that, and more than that of that today than we do. But that's the way it is. You know, back when the boats were, single rigged, what was the general size of the net back then, Bill?
Most of them were in the smaller range. They were only like 40, 45 foot.
Now, when you say 40, 45 feet, you're talking about the mouth of
the width of it. The width of it, usually the length of it falls right into the same pattern.
Same pattern.
You know, kind of like a kite. You have to balance the length of the net with the width to make it fly right under the water. You know?
Right. And that's really what it does, folks. It flies under the water, you know, and it's got to be right. Billy, when the double rigs came in, I remember, the machine shop that we had down at my Uncle Johnny's place, and, making outriggers and things now for the double rigs. Then the nets went to what, about 60 feet?
Yeah, and, 55, 60 feet.
And what are some of the bigger nets today?
Well, believe it or not, back in the 80s and 90s, the nets became pretty big. In other words, 92 footers. A lot of guys were pulling 2 92 footers, and then there were some vessels that could pull 4 100 footers. I mean, there were some huge nets. But for right now, there's laws and regulations governing the size of nets. That I don't care how big your boat is or what you can pull inside the waters. And 55 foot is the norm and the average today, which Chewy and I are kind of glad of that, because, dragging around those big old nets with all that chain on. Even though you see the nets that we're working on right over here right now, right behind us here is going to Lake Michigan. They're doing research in Lake Michigan on catching the fish and seeing what's in there, and looking at all kind of species right down to the smallest they can catch. We put liners in there for very tiny organisms, so they can see what's in there. But these nets are like 90 foot on the bottom.
Yeah. When Billy mentioned the chain, that's called a tickler chain, and it runs on the bottom of the mouth of the net, and it tickles as it goes along. And of course, if the shrimp are buried up, it tickles them and they jump up, and as they jump up, they go right into the net.
Yeah, it gets them out of the grass and the mud.
It gets them out of the grass and the mud, and gets them, ultimately to your table. And that's where they really need to be, is in front of us, so we can enjoy. Billy, growing up, you remember when our harbor was when you looked, how many boats would you estimate back in the 60s and early 70s would you say was here in Fernandina at one time?
Well, here in Fernandina, there was, 35 or 40 all the time. We had probably up to as many as 75 at one time during the season, when North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia, some of the Georgia boats would come down to Fernandina and tie up space available, if there's space available, and follow the shrimp down to the Cape, because later in the year, after the first of the year and all, there's still shrimp that are migrating down to the Cape, and that's normally where the white shrimp just disappear and die down there, but they're huge. Yeah. And so they follow them down there later in the year.
I think back to all the packing houses we had, even going back to John Clara. John Clara had a real neat setup. He the shrimp would come into his packing house, and he would steam them, and then they pasteurized them and put them in I believe it was little jars.
Yeah.
And they would box them up and ship them all over the world. There we go. they would box them up and ship them all over the world. And as a kid, I really thought that was something, you know, and I'd go out there, and of course, all the ladies that worked there, they knew me. And we got a dog here that likes the camera.
Yeah.
All the ladies.
Saving. Yeah.
And keep adjusting this, but we'll get it. All the ladies knew me, and I'd walk away with a shrimp sandwich, you know, every time I'd go. And then, of course, we had Cook, and we had Dave Cook's place, and we had White Knight Crab Company.
Yeah, let's let her. She hears her mom out there. Let's let her go.
And
go ahead.
It was quite a, you know, shrimp were being packed here 7 days a week, you know, around the clock almost.
Yeah.
And today we don't have much of that.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, there's very few boats that come through Fernandina anymore that are tied up here. You have Fernandina Seafood has 4 or 5 of the larger vessels that fish offshore, the rock shrimp, and up and down the beach, but they're freezer boats. So they come in just to unload. They may tie up for 2 or 3 days while they gear up and get their stuff ready to go, refuel, and then they're back out. You just don't see it.
Somebody asked me the other day if I thought that there would be a resurgence or a rebirth in the shrimping industry here, and I would love to say in my heart, yes, I believe there is, but I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, here's what it takes. It just takes somebody with a mind and to make it happen. And there's been some people here like Chris Bryant and a lot of people that understand what it's like.
Yeah.
We have, it would just take refurbishment of the waterfront, but thinking of the tourists as well. Mm-hmm. The boats just have to have a place to tie up and to unload. Right. That's what they need, and they will come because this is a good port here. There's a lot of shrimp caught. Everybody's gone to Mayport shrimp, but those Mayport shrimp come out of Fernandina and South Georgia as well. I mean, this East Coast is just the best place for a white shrimp. I mean, they got them in the Gulf, whatever, but we have the finest seafood on this coast anywhere.
Now, they're still packing shrimp a lot in Brunswick. I haven't been to Brunswick yet.
Not most of everybody. Well, you got City Market. City Market still does the same thing they've been doing. They've got a handful of boats right there, downtown Brunswick, what you would call it there, the docks. And and they still carry on as usual. But then you have a lot of other people that's either built freezers at their house. They take the frozen shrimp off of their boats into their freezers, and they sell them, peddle them to restaurants, and you name it. There's some selling it online now, selling shrimp online. It's a changed world.
It is. And the internet's been a big, you know, the internet has changed so many industries, and the shrimping industry is one of them that it's had a hand in.
Well, they had to because the shrimpers are really doing well. The ones that's in it, people think that it's totally dead, but it's not. The ones that are in it now that manage their monies well, manage their business, are doing very well. Yeah. I mean, you would be amazed.
I laugh when you talk about freezers because I remember I grew up on South 5th Street, as you know, and on our back porch we had 2 big chest freezers. And Dad would work on somebody's boat, and, you know, back in the 50s, it was hard times, and they may not have the money to paint, but here they started coming with shrimp and fish and squid and you name it. I mean, so of course all this was frozen. Mm-hmm. And we ate seafood, oh my gosh, 10, 12 times a week probably. Mm-hmm. And now don't get me wrong, I love my seafood, but if we go out to eat today, more than likely I'm going to order chicken, beef, or pork. It's simply because that was a delicacy when I was growing up. We always had shrimp and fish and things like that. And
well, we still do today. Lindsay and I probably most times have a low country boil every week, at least once a week.
Oh, really?
We keep our freezer full, and we do the shrimp and the corn and the sausage. Occasionally we put potatoes in it, but you know, it's just delicious, quick, and easy, and you know, and it's just who we are, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's you know, it's a wonderful thing, folks. I encourage you, if you ever get a chance to go down to the docks, which I know you do, go down. If there's a shrimp boat there, you know, be sure to take a look at it. And you know, this won't be the last interview with Billy because we've got the shrimping industry is going to be coming up here pretty soon, and Billy's going to be in some more interviews. Billy, I want to thank you.
I want to
for
thank
doing
you
this
too.
with me.
Yes, sir.
And this will, you know, a lot of folks will see this, especially the old timers that grew up here. It's going to spark a lot of memories. And for you new folks that just moved here, you love it because you're learning a little bit more about Fernandina. So until next time, God bless, and we'll see you on the road.